For centuries, London has stood at the heart of Britain's financial and commercial power. Even today, many of the world's richest and most influential companies choose the city as their base. But none of these modern corporations can compare to the extraordinary power once held by a single company, the East India Company. Founded over 400 years ago, this organization began as a trading venture operating from its headquarters in London. Yet over time, it transformed into something far greater, effectively ruling vast parts of the Indian subcontinent like a sovereign state. At its peak, the company controlled immense wealth, commanded private armies, and overthrew established local rulers. By dominating some of the most valuable global trade routes, it generated enormous profits for its investors and became one of the most powerful entities in history. But how did a private company rise to such dominance? This is the story of the East India Company. The origins of the company go back to the early 17th century. At that time, Spain and Portugal had already built vast overseas empires. Seeing the wealth these empires generated, other European nations, including England, France, and the Dutch Republic, sought to expand their own global reach. However, governments often lacked the funds to finance risky overseas expeditions. To solve this, merchants began forming joint stock companies, early versions of modern corporations. Investors could buy shares, and in return, they would receive a portion of the profits from successful voyages. One early example was the Muscovy Company, established in 1555 to trade with Russia. But the real prize lay in the East, regions like India, China, and Southeast Asia, where goods such as spices, silk, and tea were incredibly valuable in Europe. In 1600, a group of London merchants received royal approval from Queen Elizabeth I to establish a new trading company focused on the East Indies. This marked the birth of the East India Company. Its early years were challenging. The company faced fierce competition from the Dutch and Portuguese, who already had a strong presence in Asia. Gradually, however, it secured trading rights along the Indian coast. By the mid-17th century, the company had established key bases in places like Madras and Bombay. These coastal settlements became launching points for further expansion. The company's activities were not limited to trade. It also became involved in the slave trade across the Indian Ocean, transporting enslaved people to work in its operations in Asia. Throughout the 17th century, the company grew steadily but remained overshadowed by its Dutch rival. That began to change in the 18th century, when military power became central to its strategy. One of the most important figures in this transformation was Robert Clive. Rising quickly through the company's ranks, he played a crucial role in expanding its influence in India. In 1757, at the Battle of Plassey, a relatively small British-led force defeated a much larger army of the Nawab of Bengal. This victory allowed the company to take control of Bengal, one of the richest regions in India. From that moment on, the company shifted from being a trading organization to a territorial power. Over the following decades, it expanded aggressively, often at the expense of local rulers. Major Indian powers, such as the Mughal Empire, the Maratha Confederacy, and the Sultanate of Mysore, resisted, but the company's superior military organization and technology gave it a decisive advantage. To support its campaigns, the company built a massive army, including large numbers of Indian soldiers known as sepoys. By the early 19th century, it commanded a force larger than many European nations. In 1803, the company captured Delhi, marking a major milestone in its dominance. Soon after, it effectively controlled much of India, as well as present-day Pakistan and Bangladesh. With this vast control came enormous wealth. The company monopolized British trade with the region, supplying goods like tea, spices, and textiles. It also collected taxes from millions of people living under its rule. However, its governance was often deeply flawed. One of the most tragic examples was the Bengal famine of 1770, which resulted in millions of deaths due to poor administration and neglect. Beyond India, the company expanded its interests into China and Southeast Asia. One of its most profitable trades was opium, which it exported from India to China. When Chinese authorities attempted to stop this trade, tensions escalated into the First Opium War in 1839. The conflict ended with Britain gaining control of Hong Kong and forcing China to open its ports to foreign trade. Despite its immense power, the company's rule eventually faced serious resistance. In 1857, a large-scale uprising broke out across India. Driven by political, economic, and cultural grievances, the rebellion saw both civilians and soldiers rise against company rule. The conflict was brutal and widespread, resulting in massive loss of life. In its aftermath, the British government concluded that the East India Company could no longer be trusted to govern such a vast territory. In 1858, control of India was transferred directly to the British Crown, marking the end of the company's rule. Although the company continued to exist for a few more years due to financial agreements, it was officially dissolved in 1873. British rule in India, however, continued until independence in 1947. The East India Company remains one of the most powerful corporations in history, an entity that grew so large and influential that it ultimately became impossible to sustain.